Just imagine. A film studio gives a filmmaker a list of cutbacks. Cut the politics, cut the naked or no release. Most of the men would snap. Tom Laughlin did not. He just took the sound clips of his own. Walked out of Hollywood, leaving the film with a silent movie. That movie was Billy Jack, and it would make Tom Laughlin to a rich legend. And finally a man who lost almost all his creations. This is what went down. About a kid from Milwaukee who punched his way. Married the love of his life out of college. Life on a reservation in South Dakota, and spent the rest of his life trying to prove that losing your money doesn't mean losing your gall. Thomas Robert Laughlin, Jr. Birth on August 10, 1931. Margaret and in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thomas Laughlin. When he was a boy, he run headlong into difficulty. Washington High School. In an athletic controversy, he had resigned to transfer to another school for a stretch, making him ineligible to play football in the home city, became citywide news. It was the sort of scandal that would follow a lesser man for a lifetime. Laughlin shrugged and went back, and kept on playing. He had the same fighting instinct. University. He played halfback first in the safety end, then at University of Wisconsin Marquette, where depending on who you. Finally his rage got the better of him. He got kicked out in sophomore year. Following a fight, the sort of exit that closes the hopes of a young man. Then to get them going. But Laughlin's the story was never going to finish. Normal script. Somewhere along the way everything changed for him in a theater seat. He witnessed a performance of A Streetcar Named Desire and one other. Clicked. Father, a university teacher, saw the spark. John J. Walsh pushed him into drama program. Laughlin took off with it. He built his own stock firm and directed and acted in Arthur by Miller. All my sons went in college. Nope. Horrible luck for a young man who'd just been shown the door over fighting. He's finally ended up at the University of Radio, acting major, South Dakota. Director, producer. Deciding he'd rather run the show than waiting for someone to cast him in that. And there, on the missed the prairies of South Dakota, Tom Laughlin met the lady who would transform the whole course of his life. Delores Taylor. Delores Taylor was born near Winner, South Dakota on September 3, 27, 1932, and was raised close to an Indian reservation. Her heart was indeed that of a young woman. Focus on graphic design, not performing. But love has a way of rewriting careers. Plans. And when she and Tom Laughlin met at college, their futures were all locked up forever. Together, on screen and off. They are basically married on October 15, 1954. And here's the detail that subtly Tom explains the next 60 years. Life of Laughlin. Freshly that same year. Married, he wrote the original script for Billy Jack, based on from what he had seen with his own eyes concerning the treatment of Native Americans at his wife's hometown of Winner. Consider that for a moment. His career-defining film. And bring him his riches. 17 was written years before it even opened a theater. That's not ambition, it's obsession. With intention. Billy Jack took his place in a drawer. Laughlin went the long way from Hollywood's back door. He. First seen on television in 1955's Climatic. Then played small roles in Lafayette These Wilder Years, Escadrille, and 1958. A truly outstanding performance as a Navy pilot. Lieutenant Buzz Adams, South Pacific. He came up as lover boy a year later. In The Gidget. Yeah, Gidget. The one your grandchild probably has never heard about, but her grandmother certainly kowtowed to. In the year 1957, his first true starring role came in Robert Altman's The Delinquents, playing a teen who spirals into difficulties with a gang when she bars him from seeing his lover. It became a cult favorite and apparently Alfred Hitchcock's own pick himself. But the shoot was not precisely a experience making friends. Laughlin and Altman constantly argued as to how a scene to act too willful. Males who considered filmmaking as just other lenses. Somewhere a fly on the wall of that set still telling stories. This would be easy to say. Narrative as if Delores Taylor were merely the off-camera supporting wife. And that would be very hurtful to her. Disservice. Billy Jack series when she finally took off, stepped into the Billy Jack's Gene Roberts partner, and the head of an alternative school for troublesome and at-risk children. And cast her in all 4 movies. From The Return to the Born Losers. Billy Jack. Jean wasn't a trinket. She was a powerful, opinionated woman that managed her own school, stood up face to face with unscrupulous officials, and declined to yield at a moment when very leading ladies wrote few women on screen like that. The role won her a Golden Globe nod for Best Actress in a Drama. In 1996, she was inducted into South Dakota Hall of Fame, an apt memorial to a winner girl who grew up watching close and dedicated her career to injustice, doing something about it on the screen. She also co-produced The Master Gunfighter with her husband, demonstrating the relationship reached well beyond acting credits. And Tom persisted on working through. Delores opted to, in the 80s, walk away from performing altogether, rather to devote herself to her family and to charity. She had said before everything she had to say over Gene Roberts. This is where Tom Laughlin shows he was never merely an actor waiting for his big break. He was a man. Some go on to develop whole second careers on the side, almost for fun. 1959. And Delores started a Montessori Santa Monica preschool. By 1961, he was so into it he walked away from acting altogether to run the school full-time, and it worked out spectacularly. By the year 1964, it had become the biggest Montessori school throughout all of the United States. A true Time magazine profiled a phenomenon in the early education. One of its students included the young Christian Brando, Marlon Brando, Laughlin's friend's son. This shows you what kind of company the company. By then the Laughlins were keeping up. Then, in 1965, it went belly up, went bankrupt, disappeared. If you are the pattern Tom is seeking for, here is where Laughlin's whole life starts. Make something from nothing. Put everything into it, watch it triumph beyond reason, then watch it fall from his fingertips, nonetheless. The majority people would take that lesson and play it's safe for the rest of their lives. Tom Laughlin regarded it as a challenge. In 1967, Laughlin wrote, directed, and performed in The Born Losers, a low-budget motorcycle gang movie that turned into a real box office walkout. Inside was a hidden, half Navajo, ex-Green Beret wanderer who defends a vicious gang of young girls from biker gang. The public couldn't get enough. Him. Billy Jack was born. 4 years of training. Later, in 1971, Billy Jack was brought back by Laughlin. What would be the defining movie of his life? American International Group Pictures agreed to take it out till they really saw it. The studio wanted the political elements to be cut and the nudity cut, or it wouldn't be released. Not at all. Most filmmakers negotiate. Laughlin and his wife really would not. The sound spins so their own movie into a silent picture, instead of letting a studio wash it down. At last he made a deal with Warner Brothers instead, but loathed how they was selling it, sued his own distributor and in 1973 and re-released the movie himself. It was messy, it was fighting, it was. And it worked. The film grew to be a phenomenon, taken up by a generation of young Americans who watched some of the yourselves in a man who would not compromised. The best formulation came from Laughlin himself. In 1975, when he said, "The young men of the country had but two heroes, Ralph Nader and Billy Jack. Corrected for inflation, Billy Jack would become 2007 top grossing ever made indie film, not bad for a silent film bet that might have ruined his career in a second. Here's a story that didn't make it into the books of history, but Laughlin has recounted it himself, and it's the kind of thing that makes your skin crawl. His daughter, the same little girl who at just 10 years old, penned the song about a brother gone in the war that unfolded in the film, had a favorite had it ended in failure. Unique. One Halloween children would goofy string and brothed each spray other's hair to protect her. Then she'd grabbed a gorgeous golden hair inexpensive small tacks from the 5 and dime. Tom Laughlin noticed the headgear and was obsessed. "I must have that hat," he's told his children, who in his words felt their father had lost his mind. Anyway, he was stripping it down in the fiction and became a part of Billy Jack's identifiable outline. Then when shooting, said an advisor to American Indians, what the production was exhibiting was similar to the authentic ghost dance religion, a men's securities movement established by a man called Wovoka. Laughlin discovered the last living local responsive cross. Second's blood, an old man called Andy Vidovich, who lives alone in Nevada, who was so scared of flying that his own son, a highly accomplished World War II pilot, had him on a plane, never words gotten. Laughlin called him the NBA. Somehow the vintage van caught that flight. When at last Vidovich came, dressed in an person's out of privacy old brown suit, show Laughlin what Wovoka actually was. Within the picture, Wovoka was stroking the actual taxes, never faltering. Laughlin, that one was explained. Some stories maybe not to be explained, only told. The world voted those 6-something, touching him across time just once, and you for the book of books on his face when Chris the trial of Billy Jack Achieved in 1974. And was huge by any standard. Commercial success, but reviewers sharpened their knives on it. Clumsy politics. It dealt with Native American rights, police brutality, and the establishment trial of a man badly wanted to quieted, turning what would have been a simple courtroom drama into a detailed investigation of the country's mood at the moment. Laughlin, fresh off his struggle with AIP, settled with the studio for about $2 million that same year, the expense, in a sense, of doing things his own way. It's worth pausing here to enjoy what made the whole series stand distinct. These were films built on non-professional actors, unrefined speech, and harsh, unglamorous cinematography, the opposite of the glossy studio product audiences were used to. And going through all Billy Jack's only one of them was identity as half Navajo, a lineage that influenced every decision the character made. The movies were really leaning into the Native community's real struggles. Silent forced assimilation, land theft, prejudice, but at the same time ensuring viewers observed the wealth of the culture itself and not the hardship alone. Some reviews charged the movies with oversimplifying complex issues, and there is some justification for that, but Tom Laughlin could not be charged with keeping quiet about them. 1975. Came The Master Gunfighter, a Western about the predicament of Chumash people, with Laughlin sporting a beard all over, battling his way through the movie with a revolver and a samurai sword, a unusual, nearly operatic blend that ridiculous to audiences and reviewers found fairly entertaining. Too extremely good. Same movie, different reactions. Then in 1977, Billy Jack Comes to Washington. Laughlin's homage to Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, a film he'd long admired. Billy Jack is appointed to the U.S. Senate and takes on a corrupt political system with his typical blend of control and fierce rage. It should have been his best achievement. Instead, distribution troubles sank it, and it became his final theatrical release as a director. The empire he'd built one stubborn decision at a time had just taken its first big punch, and it wouldn't be the last time. By 1984, Tom Laughlin was a man at war. Industry that had made him wealthy. He placed 12 ads in Variety, vocally criticizing Hollywood's treatment of independent filmmakers. He drew out an ambitious plan to grant home control to indie films. Video dissemination, a proposal decades out of its time, and that, in the end, did not get off the ground. Then in the 1985, he started what he anticipated would be his comeback, Billy Jack Goes to Washington, with the fighting now little character pornographers from New York. In the course of the shooting, Laughlin was seriously injured. Neck injury and concussion. Manufacturing was on furlough while he healed. The money totally dried up and the film was never completed. Not put on a shelf, not delayed, just gone. A standing, unfinished chapter that plagued him for the remainder of his life. But he was still trying to fundraise for it as late as 1996. Of all things, in a case against an individual who had illegally altered his own legal name, Billy Jack. This is the end section of the story that get the tag. Lost it all. Decades worth of self-financed, self-distributed, and self-diagnosing, emptied him out. The school was long away. The video distribution dream had collapsed. His last creative vision was always unfinished on a shelf somewhere. One man who once outnegotiated Warner Brothers was now having difficulty getting the name of character he had created from a stranger that thought that name was just there for the taking. There is something nearly poetic and very sad of that image. The manufacturer, decades later, to prove in court that he was still himself, legally. But here is Tom Laughlin's version. A narrative that should make every one of us sit up a bit straighter. He had not vanish. He didn't waste his final gloomy room terrible decades, and he definitely didn't cease believing his voice was counted. He ran for president of the United States, twice, formally. 1992 and 2004. Campaign finance reform, running on stopping the drug war and tax reform, knowing full well he didn't have a real shot of victory. He ran regardless, every debate stage and all the interviews he could find to say what he thought has to be said, the way he had once utilized a movie camera. See 2008. That old incomplete footage received a second life. He recast the project as anything he called Billy Jack on president, and then re-envisioned it again with intentions for the character to argue a experienced sitting president. Revised archived speeches it never did. Not truly made. But a man in his late 70s was still inventing new methods to make Billy Jack connected to it, all about it. How giving up was ever just a little of his language. In later years, he turned towards someplace more calm, the study of the psychology of young. He wrote, he preached, and he labored to help cancer sufferers and those in crisis process what he called the deeper stories of the human brain. What a wonderful picture! The same guy who used to throw punches on the most famous screen in America, Vigilante, in his last chapter, chatting to strangers about dreams, myths, and healing somewhere. That's the least surprising thing in the world, or most. In 2001, he was diagnosed with tongue carcinoma that physicians said were inoperable. 4 years. But later his own website said it was off his meds. Was this the end of the medical fact, or Tom Laughlin just unwilling to accept one more time someone else's telling of his story? Good, that all depends on how good you think you know him by now. Tom Laughlin passed away on December 12, 2013, of low pneumonia complications at Robles Hospital, Thousand Oaks, California. He was 82. His name is. His daughter called him just and a real American maverick, true. His co-star, Delores Taylor, his wife and creative partner of almost. He died on March 23 when he was 60 years old. 2018. At 85, following a protracted battle with dementia. They left 3 children, Frank, Christina, Tom's names Teresa, and had silently dissolved in his own screen pseudonyms through the years. Frank T.C. Laughlin, a minor permanent love letter concealed in his filmography all the time. Also abandoned was a small, fiercely independent library of films not dictated to by anyone's norms, and a tradition of standing up to folks who seldom had anyone to stand for their use. Tom Laughlin lost his school Lost his money, lost his last picture. And spent years of his life in it. Courtrooms battling for what he thought was his. But during all this he never lost his willingness to risk all undoing things in his own way. So, here's the question we'd love to get your opinions on. Do you think there's an actor working today with the nerve to make a fully original character the way Tom Laughlin invented Billy Jack, or has that kind of stubborn, one-of-a-kind creativity gone the way of the dime store hat? Let us know in the comments.